Hello, and welcome to Nosotros, the podcast about Mexican-American politics, history, cultura, y más, brought to you in part by the Gomez Law Firm. I'm your host, Elaine Ayala, Metro columnist for the San Antonio Express News. My guest today is Gina Ortiz Jones, a former Air Force undersecretary under the Biden administration, and won about 27% of the vote in the May 3rd election and is in the June 7th mayoral runoff. In one of the most contentious races San Antonio has seen in recent memory. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get to questions, I play a little game of this or that with my guest. Here we go. Strong mayor or strong city manager system?
Strong mayor.
You want to elaborate?
Well, it's funny when people say, it's a weak mayor system. I think the mayor is the mayor and the results are the results, right? It really is about how the mayor, I think, in concert with the city council, sets the priorities that the city manager and the city staff execute. Right. And let's never forget that relationship and ultimately who we are all accountable to, which is the people. So I think strong mayor for me just means here's our priorities. These are the things we're going to get done for the people. And we're going to hold people accountable when we fall short.
10 council districts or 11?
One San Antonio.
Oh, okay. Partisan mayoral races or nonpartisan?
It's nonpartisan. It's a fact.
It just seems like it really isn't this time around.
Well, when Abbott is dumping almost $2 million, or his Abbott-affiliated PACs are dumping almost $2 million to drag Rolando Pablos across the finish line, they know what's at stake here. They have their guy in Houston. They have a Republican in charge of Dallas, and San Antonio's kind of, the last jewel in the crown that they would really like to have their way with. And Rolando Pablos, in his record in public service, has shown all too willing his willingness to sell out our community. I'm happy to elaborate further as we get into the interview.
Okay. Leticia Van de Putte or Hope Andrade?
For what?
That was kind of a joke.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Corn or flour?
Oh, well, it really depends. But, for breakfast, it's probably flour. For dinner, it's probably corn.
Very good. Okay. I'll begin with one of the toughest issues San Antonio faces every election season is why don't registered voters vote and what can turn them around?
Well, I think, as in your own life, right, you invest your time and your energy in what you think will benefit you. And I think when folks are not necessarily making the connection between the actions of elected leaders and an impact, a direct positive impact in their life, they don't necessarily see the need to vote, right, express themselves. Now, arguably, Texas is also, unfortunately, one of the harder states to vote in. So I think there's a combination of things there. But I think, we always have an opportunity. I think, running for office is certainly an act of hope to make sure that, people see also the potential that you see. I am very proud of to be a product of San Antonio and know the way in which, our city has invested in me and what that has allowed me to do in terms of serving our country and why I'm quite hopeful about, where our city can go with the right leadership.
Okay, let's get to you.
Okay.
One of the criticisms, perhaps the harshest one, I've heard about you pre-runoff, is that you really weren't from here, that you really aren't from here. And of course you are. But I think what the criticism is really saying is that you don't seem San Antonian to them, okay? And perhaps other mayors and council representatives seem San Antonian to them. It sounds like a criticism about your manner, and I really appreciate it. I have to tell you that the Sunday story, which I almost spit my coffee out, was when you referred to resting bitch face.
It's a thing.
That was, I think it was funny and sort of addressed the issue at hand. So address why people may think that you're not San Antonian or not San Antonian enough for them.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure if that's a question I can answer. I'd have to really, frankly, sit with that person in terms of why they think that. And that's really for them. If they have that question or that problem or issue, that's really on them. I know where I was raised. I know what that I'm a proud product of San Antonio, and am as San Antonio as they come. Yes, I am very thankful for my bone structure. Thank you, Mom. I'm a proud Filipino, and these bones, they don't lie. They are, in fact, yes, though, a blessing and a curse. When I am, tuned in and listening to you, I mean, I'm not grinning like an idiot, right? Right? Like I am listening like with a normal face, and my face just happens to be like very serious. I also happen to be a very reserved person in general. And I've shared this previously, but I think my personal experience serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This is, again, an experience that was quite formative for me because it's when I served in the military, but even when I was in college, there was this kind of idea you had to be reserved. You couldn't share too much because then if they found out you were gay, I would lose my scholarship, my college scholarship. I could be kicked out of the military and be forced to pay back all the money that they just provided for my college. So I think there's part of that that training in terms of, you share what you need to share. But in general, I was also raised to be very private. We don't, we're not, among family and friends, we're effusive. But with, acquaintances, we are a little bit reserved. And then I think certainly, a woman running for office, a lesbian running for office in Texas, people have lots of thoughts. Lots of thoughts. And you're not going to please everybody. And I honestly don't try to. You know why? Because I'm focused on getting shit done and focused on the issues that people care about, right? And honestly, I mean, and I said this in the article, 10, 15 years from now, no one's going to care about how much I smiled. They're going to care about what she got done, right? What she got done. And that's what I'm focused on.
That's as good an explanation as I could hope.
That's a puro answer for you, too.
Yeah, I use bitch, you use shit. That's all so good.
Does it get more San Antonio?
I don't know.
Than Exit 7? I mean, Adams Hill Elementary School, Pease Middle School, John Jay High School. I mean, talk about, it's funny, I'll never forget when I got to Boston University, one of the higher cadets, she was a junior, and she found out I was from San Antonio. And so she asked me where I went to high school. And I said, John Jay High School. And she said, oh. And I was like, well.
It's like saying Lanier.
Well, but it's also, when you get that reaction, you buck up a little bit, right? She went to Antonian. No offense, Antonian. I got good people that went to Antonian. But I just, what it did, Elaine, is remind me that that might sometimes be a thing, right? Where people are going to judge you where you came from. But I had to remind her that, homegirl, I'm here on a 4-year Air Force ROTC scholarship. Out of a class of 25, there's only 2 of us, baby. And yes, one of us went to John Jay High School. So that's how I when people try to underestimate or in any way prejudge, I'm fueled by that because I know my performance will speak for itself.
Yes, ma'am. Correct. Neither you or your opponent, Rolando Pablos, have city hall experience. How will you make up for that?
Well, I have an experience that he also does not have, I've never been sued by civil rights groups in the course of doing my job.
Ouch, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, do you need to take, okay.
Good one.
Yeah. I am proud of my record of public service. And that's largely shaped by my mom, who raised us by herself, just reminding us that we were very lucky, right? Not smart, lucky, and we'd have to give back to this country. So I've been honored to serve our country in a number of ways, even if that meant serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And my sister serves in the Navy to this day. And so it has always been ingrained in us, like when you have the opportunity to help people, you help people. Not only is that, frankly, the social justice Catholicism that I was raised in, but it's also, I think, just understanding just how special this country is. Not only have I experienced it firsthand, but Elaine, I've also served in other countries where, folks don't have a shot, that are not treated fairly, where there isn't a strong middle class, what that has meant for that country. So I have always prided myself in using my opportunity to serve to uplift others, right? And while, having managed a $173 billion budget, right, as the Undersecretary of the Air Force, that's a budget that is 40 times the budget of San Antonio. I led 600,000 people, and those folks were all over the world, right, as well as their family members, making sure that they had what they needed to be successful. And I think, the undersecretary's job, you ask yourself two questions every single day. One, do my folks have what they need to be successful? And two, are we making smart investments? I think that's fundamentally the job of the mayor. So I look forward to bringing my service and leadership in service to City Hall. I would argue, we've got a budget gap in 27. And I know I spent a lot of my time working on the budget at the Department of the Air Force and really understand, how we make trade-offs, how we ensure that we are collecting sufficient data to fund no-fail missions, make sure we're minimizing any long-term risks, and certainly in our instance, making sure we're minimizing any impact to the most vulnerable. I'm very fearful of what when Governor Abbott talks about DOGE cuts at the state level. We're seeing what those cuts mean at the federal level, and what that has meant in San Antonio, almost $400 million already in impacts, on top of what it means in people's everyday, right? I mean, just yesterday we were at a forum on housing, on the unhoused rather, and the homelessness crisis in our community, and they were asked about what's the mayor's role in really speaking up on some of these things at the federal level and the state level that are impacting us. And I had previously already brought up DOGE, and he said, these DOGE things that Gina is talking about, we just have to deal with it. Hold on now, hold on. No, we don't have to just deal with attacks on the most vulnerable. And we certainly don't need to be a green light for the Abbott and Trump agenda in our community. We don't have to do that. And so that's my real concern with somebody like Rolando Pablos, who understands, I think, fundamentally, that they are more beholden to the person who has power than to the people that they would ultimately be responsible for serving. That's my real. I mean, I've got a number of issues with him, but I think that is kind of what this comes down to. So I think my record of leadership, my record of delivering results, my record of also caring for the most vulnerable and trying hard to hear from those that have traditionally not been heard or well served. I have a long record of doing that. He has a record of holding people down.
If you're elected, what are a few of your priorities, especially given the deficit, which you mentioned, and the deep federal cuts, not just to San Antonio, but all these other institutions and nonprofits in town?
Yeah. Well, I think, as we're also looking at all of that, on the way here, I just read the article, unfortunately, about, what is happening to the undocumented in our community. Right. So it's, these impacts are not impacting everybody disproportionately. You and I were also just talking about, all those federal cuts on top of the ways in which, yes, the LGBTQ community, my community, also feels attacked as a group of people. Right. Not just kind of the things that support us, but really federal government and state government's desire to even acknowledge our existence. Right. So I think all of that is important as we think, yes, about the numbers and cents. But what this means to people. And so when we're thinking about the budget itself, a moral document, I think it's important, again, as I mentioned, we are funding those no-fail missions. Those folks that keep us safe, we've got to make sure they have the resources to do so. And I have, I myself have spent time at the senior center on the north side, Walker Ranch. I was there during the birthday celebration in January, where over 200 some odd seniors had a meal. Right. And they had a band, and there wasn't a band, sorry, there was a DJ. And so they were doing a little bit of dancing. They had their cupcakes. They were all singing happy birthday, Las Mañanitas as well. But 200 meals were gone in 15 minutes, the staff said. So those are critical resources that I want to make sure that we're protecting, given, again, many of those folks are reliant on that meal. And then as we're looking at the budget, how do we make sure we minimize any long-term risks as a result of some of these changes? That's how I would go into that. I think it's also important, though, that we are walking and chewing gum at the same time. We have the 2027 bond coming up, right? Which is, the thing we do every 5 years that says, okay, these are the major investments that we want to make. And we've got certainly some infrastructure opportunities to tackle. So I look forward to doing all of those things, as well as, of course, making sure we get a good deal on our downtown development. I know that's gotten a lot of interest, and certainly differences between myself and my opponent and how we attack that.
Yeah, that's one of my questions too.
Yeah.
This Project Marvel will cost about $4 billion.
That's on the low end, right? Yeah, on the low end.
And this is the third arena that the people of San Antonio helped pay for. And everybody loves the Spurs. We don't want them. We do not want them to
100%.
leave. But
I still have my David Robinson and Sean Elliott trading cards.
Oh,
please
wow.
don't. I mean, please. Right? Okay. I'm with you.
And so where do you stand on this huge issue that will face, they'll face the next mayor?
Yeah. I think we, big picture, have to look at any of these generational investments in the context of our generational inequities. Okay. Big picture, I'm also concerned about kind of how we got to where we are. A lot of the focus has been on how do we pay for it? Well, when I talk to a lot of neighbors, they're like, well, what's the it? And how does the it benefit the entire city? Right? Because to your point, yes, people have Google and they have seen the ways in which these investments haven't necessarily, the promises around these investments haven't necessarily borne themselves out, right? Nelson Wolff, I think, sat at this exact table and talked about how the deal he negotiated was that in exchange for using public money to build the AT&T Center, that we were supposed to get 20% of Spurs' annual profit back. He said, ask me how much we got over 20 years. 0. Right. I was at that town hall that Tommy Calvert had, the second town hall, where folks were rightly pissed off about where's that development you were talking about and now you're leaving. Right. Yeah. And so where I take all of that into consideration when we look at what is possible now. Right. Because, again, you'd be a fool to not look at history, but not also but then recognize also this could be, I mean, as I said, we should be thinking about it. Could this be, in fact, the way in which, revenue streams from this help us fund our pre-K for SA program from now to eternity and fully meet the need? We talk a lot about poverty in our community. My opponent likes to talk about it, but he doesn't offer any solutions in how to address it. I think a fundamental thing that we need to do, and I said I want to do it in the first 100 days, city staff, help us understand how many kids, how much talent are we leaving on the table as a result of not fully meeting the need for pre-K in our community. The program started under Julian Castro, a great vision. Right now, we only meet a fraction of the need. Okay, so what's the gap, right, between what we need to have and what we're currently providing, and then show us the bill. As a community, we should understand what that bill is. I would argue that's a bill we can't afford to not pay in light of the inequities in our community. So why can't we be bold in asking for resources to invest in these things that help us in the long term? I mean, when I talk to folks and they're like, so wait, we're building something else that I have to go pay $60 to go park at again? Right? I mean, the vast majority of folks will afford, 1 or 2 Spurs games. So I think folks expect their leaders to fight for a good deal for the city and fight to keep the Spurs. I don't think those are mutually exclusive. And I think we can do both, right? Where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, I was at the ULI luncheon where Peter Holt talked about it's got to be good for the community. I couldn't agree more.
And funding pre-K for SA fully will get third graders reading at grade level.
We should all want that.
It's directly equated.
Yeah. I hear a lot about 78207. You want to help 78207? Let's make this investment.
Yeah. The West Side is definitely a place that has not gotten equity at all. And how would you begin to address that?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with these are the type, I was just at a Maria Berriozabal, Rosie Castro, many great leaders just put on
I saw that. That looked real fun.
Oh, hey. I mean, when those folks are in a room, you just kind of sit back and say, yes, ma'am, and do what they tell you and learn as you go. But, there was a woman there that showed a graphic and it mapped all of the public libraries. And she then highlighted Highway 90. And very clearly, things dropped off very significantly. And I made the point, because I think we sometimes can't forget it's not just resources, but those resources have implications. I said, yeah, it's not just libraries. What is more above 90 and less below 90 is years of your life. Right?
Absolutely.
Like that's how we have to address these things. So when you're talking about educational inequities, how do we fully fund this? But to your point, how do we prioritize those areas where we know need the most help? My concern when people are talking about, oh, we'll just do this and we'll do an even spread across. Well, that doesn't reflect that, District 4, some of the other areas of our city haven't been invested in up until now, right? So that 10% now is not 10% for the other place. It doesn't acknowledge they've been so underinvested in for so long. And so whether you're talking about, where do we put pre-K for SA, but also where do we put the infrastructure? I think you prioritize the areas that we need to help uplift, which helps all of us be much stronger. That's how I would prioritize it. I will say, I think when I go into to different parts of our city and also see opportunities that maybe haven't traditionally been invested in, I was at the 43rd Conjunto Festival, right? And it was nice. It was wonderful.
I heard you dance.
I did. I may have danced. I may have danced. But it was nice to talk to Christina, who puts that on, and really what a treasure that is. Because half the folks I met were not from San Antonio, right? So it's a big draw. It's a wonderful way to highlight the talent on the West Side and the tradition there. But that she acknowledged that we have to spend a lot of money just to be able to have it here, right? Because we're so committed to doing it at Rosedale. When I walk into some of these things now, I'm like, oh, this is a bond project, right? These are things that we've got to as well as just, the West Side, when you think about the rich arts culture that I would argue, don't necessarily invest in nearly as much, not only for residents, but also in terms of tourism. And I think that's important. When I was just talking to several GMs at a breakfast we were having with some tourism leaders, they talked about the need to bring more kind of the high-end business traveler to San Antonio. Well, those folks are not looking for Rainforest Cafe, right? They're looking for more of these like niche experiences.
Absolutely.
So they should go to Graciela's museum. They should go to Conjunto Festival. Like those, how do we better highlight those things? Similarly, when I was with Phyllis and a couple of folks, I think actually it was only Phyllis. Phyllis and at the time Adriana, the opening for the World Heritage Site. That is not just a South Side thing. We should be very proud that we're the first in Texas to have that. And now that's a San Antonio placemaker. Those are the kinds of things that I wish we could elevate, which is not only good for the bottom line, but I think is good to bringing attention to the other infrastructure investments that would also support those activities.
And the Arboretum will be that
Yes,
too,
absolutely.
on the South Side. Okay, we're running out of time, but I will ask one more thing about your future.
Yeah.
So if you lose this race, what will you do next? Or if you win, what will you do after 8 years?
That's a long time from now.
But, we all have, you have a certain set of skills that can be used in a lot of different ways anywhere in the country. So what's in store for you?
Yeah, I think regardless, I'm going to be focused on public service, and I'm going to be focused on making San Antonio the best she can possibly be. I would be, is that the last question? Or
It is.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I would be remiss if I did not come on this show, a show about Mexican-American politics, and really highlight the importance of this mayoral race. Now, I obviously am not Mexican American. I'm a proud Filipino American. My opponent, however, is a Mexican American, however, has used his time in public service to make it much more difficult for the next generation of people of color in general to fully experience what it means to be an American citizen. What do I mean by that? As the Secretary of State, when he served in that position, he was sued by the League of Women Voters, by the NAACP, for being willing to share very personal voting information with the Trump Voter Commission. That Voter Commission was trying to find information on to support their voter fraud allegations. And in Texas, they had a specific interest on voters with a Hispanic last name. Now, other Republican secretaries of state throughout the country, when asked of them, they said, no, we're not sharing that with you. Here in Texas, Rolando Pablos was willing to share that information, and a Texas district judge had to order him not to share that. So I might not be Mexican American, but I have never sold out my community. And I have never made it harder for people to exercise their rights as an American citizen. So let's be very clear about what's at stake in this race. Who is funding my opponent, and our plans for the future. And I think somebody whose campaign has been willing to engage in racism does not bode well for our community. I'm the only one in this race that has said I do not think local law enforcement should be used as ICE agents. He has yet to say that. So I think we look at people
for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a basic thing. My goodness, we need, if you care about local law enforcement and their needs and keeping our community safe, you have them focused on the things that are actual threats to our community, right? I'm very, very concerned. Even at my own church, I go to San Antonian de Cebu on the east side. Our Tagalog mass is at noon, and at 2 o'clock is the Spanish mass. It breaks my heart to when Father says that there are less people at the 2 p.m. mass, out of fear of what may happen there, and then kids not going to school, people would argue are probably being taken advantage of in our community, wage theft, domestic violence, and they don't feel comfortable calling somebody because they don't know who's going to show up. We could have somebody that would be a green light for the Trump and an Abbott agenda, or we can have somebody beholden to San Antonio, and that is the kind of mayor I would be.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Good luck on everything, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can watch the video version of Nosotros on YouTube or listen to it anywhere you get your podcasts. My Metro column appears Wednesdays and Fridays in the San Antonio Express News. And if you want to reach me, my email address is eayala@express-news.net. Early voting is underway in this run-up and continues until June 3rd. The election is June 7th. Please vote, gente. And thank you for joining us. See you next time on Nosotros.